Hey everyone, I hope you guys are having a good day. We are going to go over exam 3 practice problems, so that entire practice exam that we were given. Just so you know, there's a new version of the practice problems up on Blackboard, so we'll be going through those. So if you don't have those, make sure that you find those. So first, we're going to start with problem 1. We're going to start with the cash collections portion. So just that very first question within that problem. So let's read the problem together. So it shows us here that we have projected cash sales and sales on account for Allie's Market. We have cash sales and we also have sales on account right here. So those are distinct and different. We want to make sure that we remember that. So I'm going to take a highlighter because it's really important to highlight important information. So it says right here, the past records show that 10% of her sales are on account in the month, or that she collects 10% in the month of sale, 80% in the following month, and 5% in the third month. So those are just 3 things I want to remember. So the very first thing we're going to do is calculate the total cash collections for months of February, March, April by month. So let's get started. I'm going to flip to that page that I've prepared. Okay, so I've made kind of a little graph already of what I'm going to do. If you need to pause and copy this, do so now. But let's get started. So the very first thing I like to do is write this schedule out just like this, because if we're doing it and we're repeating ourselves, we're going to remember the format. So I'm going to look to this problem here, and I want to go off the sales on account. I don't want to go off the cash sales, because the cash sales is the cash I'm actually getting right now, where the sales on account is what I'm trying to determine in terms of this 10% per month, the 80% in the following month, and the 5% in the third month. So I'm going to write those numbers right here. And like I said, I'm just going to write them down, and if you need to pause, you can do that. Okay, so another thing you may be wondering is you may think, well, you're doing this 90,000 here for January, but we just want these months. And that's true, but there's parts of January that are actually going to impact February. So that's what we're going to do there. So I like to call this our ghost month, because we need information from it, but we're actually not trying to determine really anything for January. Another thing I like to do, so I like to have this reference here just so I can multiply really easy. I also like to make a little reference up here. So I wrote kind of an example here, and I put, in the month of sales, I'm collecting 10%. In the month following, I'm collecting 80%. This is just a little table I make. You don't have to do this. And then I'm collecting 5% in the third month. So this will help us as we try and multiply across. So it looks like from January, so January, February, so February is the second month, so that would be the month following. So we'd multiply 90,000 by 80%, which gives us 72,000. Then I like to go this way first, and I don't. Some people like to go this way. It's up to you. I like to go this way. So then in the third month, so this was the second month, the month following, and so this March would be the third month for January. So we'd multiply 90,000 by 5%, which is 4,500. And then nothing for April because we don't have information for the fourth month. So we would probably assume that remainder is uncollectible. Now for February, so February, these two match, so that means that this would be the month of. So that would be 10% of 120,000, so that's 12,000. And then March, again, we're following that same pattern, so 80% times 120, that's going to give us 96,000. And then April, same pattern, so that's the third month, so that's going to be our 5%, so 5% times 120, and that gives us 6,000. So this is the same deal for the next 2, so I'm just going to fill them in really quickly, and if you need, I want you to think about them first and then make sure that your answers match mine. So just fill in these numbers in. Okay, so just a really quick thing. So we know that March, month of, so we want to match these two, and then that means that's where we start. And same here, April, we start here because that's where we match it. So that was the 10%, and then the 80% here for April, because March, the month following March is April. Okay, so are we done? And the answer is no. So we're going to come back to our sheet here. So we did the sales on account, we're good here, right? So the next question is, in terms of our cash collection schedule, we actually want to deal with our cash sales as well, which is kind of different. So we know that in February we collected 8,000, and in March we collected 12,000, and in April we collected 15,000. So let's transfer that information. So I'm going to put a separate column and just call it cash. You can call it maybe like cash collected, something like that, but this is actual cash that we know that we're collecting. So in February it was 8,000, and then in March it was 12,000. In April we had 15,000. Great. So now we actually are pretty much done with this question in terms of the cash collection schedule. So let's total these things all up. So my totals that I got, let me do this first. So the totals that I got are 92,000, 127,500, and 161,000. Awesome. So that's our cash collection schedule. As you can see, just to point out, I put a nice title here. I have all my information in my table laid out in terms of, I made sure that I had my January, February, March, April. I didn't squish up all the information into one line, because that will be more confusing. So make sure that your schedule on your test looks something like this. Okay, so we're going to work on the next problem in the next video.